everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Sarah with Sirens Books, and today I'm doing my October reading wrap-up. So let's just jump into it. So in the month of October, I read 16 books. 2 of those I have new favorites, and one of them I just didn't like that much. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So getting started with my absolute favorite book of the month of October is Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is the sequel to Dark Window, which is the second book in the Shepherd King series. I actually received this as an ARC from NetGalley, and I was absolutely thrilled to get this book early. And I have to say, it's probably going to be one of my favorite books of the year. The writing for this book is absolutely phenomenal. It's very atmospheric. I loved the conclusion of the series. The pacing in this is absolutely phenomenal. It starts basically where we leave off in One Dark Window, and there's really no downtime. And there's some really phenomenal character development between all of our characters, but one of my favorites, our new favorites, is Elm. So one of my favorite books of the year. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. There's some romance in here as well, and we get a very satisfying conclusion for Raven and Elspeth's story. Another one of my new favorites for the month of October is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzin. I adored this book. I actually went into this blind. I didn't read too much about it. I just saw the cover for the Waterstone edition of this book and just knew I had to read it. It's an epic fantasy that follows Taliesin, who is fighting against Prince Alaric and the Night Empire, and her forces have actually been defeated and she has to go into hiding, and that's whenever she finds out that she's actually a princess. And that's how our story kicks off. One of my favorite elements of this book is the banter that we get between Alaric and Taliesin. I really love their dynamic. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars only because I was really hoping for more from the world building. That portion of the book did feel a little bit clunky, and I just wanted more of the story from the author on that level. I really do recommend going into this book blind. I think if you read a lot of the tropes, it might skew your opinion one way or the other. Personally, since I didn't read any reviews on this before I jumped in, I ended up really enjoying it, and some of the elements and some of the tropes that were in the book actually ended up being kind of surprising for me. And I actually heard this from another book talker that this is actually a Reylo retelling, and you know how much I love a Reylo retelling, so really excited to see where this series goes. I absolutely love this book. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. In terms of spice, I'd rate it pretty low. It's probably gonna be like 0.5 out of 5 kind of thing. So because it's October, I was really leaning into reading a lot of paranormal or witchy themed books this month. That made up the bulk of the reading that I did. My least favorite book this month was The Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. My main gripe with this book was just that the FMC Sadie, I really couldn't empathize with. I found her character very annoying. So because I couldn't really empathize with her, because I found her annoying, I honestly didn't have a good time reading this book. I almost DNF'd it. I decided to go ahead and finish to see whether or not the last, half of the book would actually be a little bit more engaging. I didn't find that to be the case. Again, this book just wasn't really for me. I was kind of sold on the book just because it was supposed to be a practical magic meets Gilmore Girls kind of vibe, and I could see where some of those elements kind of came out, but overall, this book just wasn't for me. I didn't like it very much. Some of my favorite witchy reads of the month is Tricky Magic by L.L. Campbell. This is definitely a spicier magical realism witchy read, which I would recommend. Another one is The Witch Collector by Carissa Weeks. That one has a lot more fantasy element to it than Tricky Magic did, but I gave both of these a 4 out of 5 stars. Another series that I read this month is the Charming Cove series by Lindsay Hill. The first book in the series is The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic, and the second is How to Fake Date a Vampire. This book is set in Charming Cove, which is a small town that has magic. The first book in the series is The Modern Girl's Guide to Magic. This follows Arya and Callan. Arya is returning to Charming Cove to compete in a magic competition where she's going up against Callan, and at one point during the competition they actually have to be teammates. But it just so happens that Callan is also her mortal enemy. So it's a little bit of an enemies to lovers forced proximity trope for the first book. The second book, How to Fake Date a Vampire, follows Emma, who is also a witch in the town of Charming Cove. She has to host a ball. She wants to do that on the Duke's property, and in return for Emma being able to host this ball on the property of the Duke needs something in return, which is fake dating to pacify his great-grandmother who is in ill health. So definitely a fake dating trope. Both of these books don't really read like fantasy or paranormal. Those elements of any book are actually on the lower end. Whereas other books, like kind of in the same genre, go very heavily into the magic system and magic development. This doesn't really do that. So I would recommend these books for anybody that may be interested in reading a paranormal romance or like a kind of low stakes fantasy, but don't really like fantasy or paranormal, because there's not very much in it in this series. Two other witchy reads that I had this month were What the Hex, which is the sequel to Go Hex Yourself. It's the second book in the Hex series by Jessica Clare. This one follows Penny and William. Penny is a familiar and William is a warlock. In this world, every witch and warlock has to have a familiar in order to cast more powerful spells. William is actually banned from having a familiar. Penny is helping him out under the table. It's a grumpy sunshine, fake dating. It's really cute. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. If you like to Go Hex Yourself, you'll like this book. I also read A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I probably would have liked this book more if I hadn't read so many witchy books that all had very similar themes, and that this book also had a witch that was having trouble with her magic, and in the process of trying to fix the magic, meets a guy, and the guy helps her. And that was a theme throughout all of these books, I feel like. Tricky Magic had it. The Witch Collector even had it. Modern Girl's Guide to Magic had it. Like, everybody seemed to have like kind of the same similar subplot. And by the end of the month, this was the last book I read in October, I was kind of over it. So it wasn't my favorite book of the month. I think I probably would have rated this higher if I hadn't read so many similar books in October. So taking a break from some of my witchy reads, I read The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. This was suggested to me by another friend of mine. The Nanny is about Cassie, who is currently working to pay for her graduate classes. She found a job posting for a nanny that pays well and has a flexible enough schedule that she could still attend her graduate classes. But lo and behold, the employer for said position is a man that she knew from her past. And that's how the story unfolds. It's actually pretty spicy. You gotta watch out for those cartoon covers. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Aiden and Cassie. They're both pretty mature. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The reason why I took off a star though is because the conclusion, the last 75% of this book, was very predictable. I also read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is a contemporary romance that follows Jeannie and Logan, a bit of a grumpy sunshine. She's moved to Dream Harbor to take over running her aunt's coffee shop. There's town meetings. It definitely has a bit of a Gilmore Girls vibe. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars just because it wasn't very memorable and definitely kind of cheesy, but still cute. I would really recommend this for anybody who's looking for just a very low stakes, fall, atmospheric kind of a book. Rabid by Ivy Asher and Raven Kennedy. I read this because I saw it on Instagram and I really liked the cover. I thought it was really interesting. If it wasn't for one thing that really just gave me the ick, and it was a not. That's all I'll say about it. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I finally actually got a chance to read The Curse of Saints this month. That was a special edition that I got from Fairy Loot towards the beginning of the year, but made time to actually read it this month. I kind of wish I didn't, and the reason why is because the parallels that I could draw between The Curse of Saints and the Hurricane Wars down to the chapter kind of made the book a bit redundant. I think I would have liked this more had I read it any other month, but even like it's another enemies to lovers. The world building is a little bit better in here, but there's a lot of info dumpy parts that I didn't like. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. The next 3 books that I'm going to talk about, I gave each of these 4 out of 5 stars. The first is Butcher and Blackbird by Brian Weaver. This follows Rowan and Sloane, and Rowan and Sloane both have one thing in common, and it's that they are both serial killers. This dark romance was definitely different from the other books that I read this month, but in a good way. It kind of broke up some of the monotony of the books that I read this month. I actually really enjoyed this, but check trigger warnings before you jump in. Again, it is a dark romance and we are dealing with serial killers, so be warned before you jump in. Also got a chance to read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo this month. This one I liked a lot more than Ninth House. I thought the pacing was a lot better. Alex and Dawes venture into hell to save their friend who is trapped following the events in Ninth House. I really enjoyed the pacing of it. There's a lot more paranormal that's introduced into this book as well. I did think it was a little bit overly long and wordy, but overall I did enjoy it. More than I did Ninth House. And lastly, a book that came out in October that I was dying to read was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This is the 5th book in the Chestnut Springs series and also the conclusion of Chestnut Springs. This book follows Beau after he's returned from missing in action, and Bailey, who lives in the town of Chestnut Springs. Bailey is kind of an outcast, and Beau bets her that if they start dating, that it would improve her reputation. I thought this was really cute. I enjoyed Beau's story. Sad to see these characters go, but I am excited to see that Elsie Silver has a new series coming out in a couple months, which I will be reading. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in October. Please, if you made it to the end of this video, leave a pumpkin in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, but we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.